issues. Won't you be my neighbor? So Won't You Be My Neighbor is a documentary. It's a peek behind the curtain of Mr. Rogers the Man and his show Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood. Funny enough, Mr. Rogers the Man is very much Mr. Rogers that we saw on screen. You always wonder about that, where the character ends and the person begins, and really he was just being himself. That's what I love most about this. It's just the story of a really positive guy who just wanted to spread positivity throughout the world and to the youth. And it being a documentary, it shows the breakdown of things that I totally missed as a kid. Mr. Rogers was like, death! We're gonna talk about death because sometimes pets die. What? To kids? Yes, and we're gonna talk about divorce and other heavy-handed things that most shows would be like, nope, let's just give them entertainment. Mr. Rogers was like, no, they're people. He connected with kids at a very personal level. He understood that just because kids can't articulate their thoughts and feelings as adults do, doesn't mean they don't have thoughts and feelings. Feeling is the first thing we do. We're born, we feel. We feel well before we have words. And I love that this shows that Fred Rogers understood that. It's very inspiring. You're inspired. Maybe you'll be inspired creatively. Maybe you'll be inspired to talk to your family, which maybe you don't talk to them as much as you probably should. Point is, you'll be inspired. Like, I didn't know they touched on relevant issues. There was even a scene, he made this profound statement with a kid's wading pool. Him and someone else dipping their feet in the pool. Huge statement. It just shows that you don't need $1.5 billion to make a profound statement. You can do it with your low budget set and a kid's wading pool. Subtlety, nuance. Know what I mean? In fact, Chris Pratt, I think, broke that down best. A little sidetrack. Remember Chris Pratt won an award and then he broke down his 10 Chris Pratt rules? One of them was something like, if you're gonna give a dog medicine, put the medicine in a piece of meat. The dog won't even know they're taking medicine. You really think he's talking about a dog right there? He might be. But in this metaphor, we people are dogs. Put the message in something someone loves, subtlety, and they will get it. They won't even know it. This movie really is a celebration of the love of human beings, which is really hard to see these days. Social media is just depressing, really, for 100 reasons. Not only what you read on social media, but how people interact on social media. Twitter itself is constructed to either talk trash or argue, which is why if you can't change it, leave it. We do what we need to do to find happiness. I just think civil discourse has been traded in for the monetary value of likes and retweets. I just do. But this takes it back to a time where it's like, no, the human interaction is actually something quite good, quite special. This guy really saw the best in people. It's the celebration of the human experience. And that does bring to mind the fact that Mr. Rogers, he's a time capsule. Mr. Rogers today probably wouldn't work today. Not only because he'd probably be depressed, because most of the things he did not like, it's now everywhere. But if there was a Mr. Rogers show today, there would undoubtedly be a Mr. Rogers YouTube channel, and he would probably go to the comment section of those YouTube videos, he would just get depressed. Dude talked to kids and worked with puppets. Those are prime conditions for some comment section trash talk. But I really can't help but see the war of worlds between the world we have now and the world that was his in his mind's eye. If for nothing else, this movie is a peaceful protest of the venom and ire you see out there. Whether it be socially, politically, just in general conversation, lines have been drawn, and it's like you're either on this side or that side. There's no gray area, but everyone's actually in a gray area. They just think they're on these other sides. People have more in common than they don't have in common. If you're on the other side, well, now you're the enemy. There are no enemies. What? When did enemies even come into it? I can't help but think this movie was made to be a peaceful protest to that. I might be projecting. I don't know. It might not be. In the end, you walk out of this movie saying Mr. Rogers saw the good in people, and it makes you see the good in people. Really, Fred Rogers figured it out. We're all looking for happiness. Keeping your inner child alive doesn't make you childish. It makes you youthful, and that's a good thing. No one could ever look at Mr. Rogers and say he was immature. It was well-spoken, very intelligent, but he apparently never felt that growing old meant your childhood had to die. It's such an easy trap to fall into. It's like the older you get, the easier it is to let the joy of your youth die, wither, decay. It's really the lesson of Mary Poppins, so it's nothing new, but keeping that youthful joy alive is important. It's important to carry that throughout your adult life. He's the end game. He's what we're all trying to achieve. You take me, it's like, I want to be happy. That means you want to be more like Mr. Rogers. You take anybody. Well, it looks like the stock market's up 10 points. Good. After all, I just want to be happy. Yeah, you just need to be more like Mr. Rogers. Because in the end, Won't You Be My Neighbor, it was sweet. And I was welling up with tears, but it's just like, I can't actually tell you exactly when. There is a part near the end, but it was a flow and ebb of emotion. Half of it's probably happiness, the other half's probably sadness of the fact that we're not gonna get another Mr. Rogers. Mr. Rogers is Mr. Rogers. There's no other Mr. Rogers. Mr. Rogers wouldn't thrive in this time, but we have what he gave us, so we can carry it to this time, because it's a very relevant message. Like, his messages then are very relevant now. And that's true immortality right there. It's the only immortality we can ever hope to achieve. Live on in your work and have your work still inspire decades later. This documentary was great in all the right ways, and personally, It's just, I needed this. It doesn't have action. It doesn't have explosions. In fact, he didn't like entertainment like that. But words always maintain their power. Either case, Won't You Be My Neighbor is awesome-tacular. So Won't You Be My Neighbor? Have you seen it? What did you think about it? Or what's your favorite uplifting documentary? The one that really hits you in the feels. Whatever it is, whatever you think, comment below, let me know. And as always, if you like what you've seen here and you want to see more, click right here to see more.